Hello, hello. Excuse me. Good afternoon in New York, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and all the other hours of the places where you are. In statistically, we see this is in Asia, this is in Paris, this is in London, and of course, in the U.S., New York, San Francisco, the San Francisco area, Denver, Colorado, as well as Miami, Florida for the main ones. So hello for where where you ever you are. Let me welcome you here wherever you are. Also on the channels, if it is YouTube, if it is LinkedIn, or if it is Instagram or Facebook, or on the podcast line, also in Spotify and other podcasts like Apple Podcast and all the other ones, and also Microsoft and Amazon. Sorry, this is a most recent one. Um, the format of this half hour together is changing, and coming the new year 2024, we'll use Zoom as our format, which will in fact allow us to be several people talking to you. It will be more of a forum format. This way, we can do some little debates. A half hour is sufficient for the kind of leadership topics that we want to cover. And the guests will be really all kind of people that are in the workplace and in the leadership position, managers, C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, professionals, but definitely people who are leading other people, who are inspiring other people. Don't forget the title, You Change the World, is you. It's you who changes the world. And what do I mean by that? Should change the world is very, very simply the impact you have on other people, because one person represents the world by itself. And really, we all have our history, our baggages, right, as we call it, and we all have our emotions. And definitely, that forms sometimes a community, or sometimes just one individual person that can just impact someone else. And this impact can change that person's life. By changing that person's life, it changes the world. And this is very simply what I meant by giving that title, not because it was an ambitious title, because it was in fact a title of reality, an authentic title. When you coach people in the leadership field, when it is coaching, leadership development coaching, this is addressing people who want to develop themselves. They do all kind of assessments, 360s, feedback assessments, personality assessments. They want to learn more about themselves and gain more and more self-awareness. And by doing that, they improve themselves. And the coaching definitely is a journey for them to engage into, because all the situations they are facing, all the challenges they are facing, that we bring here in this really in on the coaching stage, is an amazing, amazing kind of platform. And all the tools that we have available, all the different resources that we use, and the kind of in the moment being a partner, being a sounding board, being really actively listening to the peoples that are sharing their stories and their experiences, bring, when we set really the proper objectives and clear ones in a journey of 3 months, 6 months, sometimes a year or more. I had a client for 7 years, every week. And definitely that those kind of people realized through the experience of being coached that they could really extract from themselves, really the best of themselves. They could really kind of identify what an opportunity could be right there in front of them that they could not have seen maybe. Or sometimes they say words. It's amazing. In fact, this week and last week, the amount of people I was listening to, and they were saying things that they did not know in themselves that they were saying. That's one of the the skills that the ICF, International Coach Federation, requires from a certified coach, is to actively listen. But that means doesn't what does it mean actively listening? It's not only that I'm showing with my body language that I'm really very much with you and caring for what you're saying and totally present, but it is something else too. It's the non-say, the non-spoken that we can really hear, the between the lines, the things that you're at the back in your mind. Oh, you meant probably that, didn't you? Or the kind of questions about the things that sometimes people say about behaviors, about the experience, that the experience itself, the touching with their finger on something that is so crucial for themselves. So those are the things that we're not going to let leak or skip, And we're going to kind of dig into and make it very, very professionally thorough, so that really we can get the takeaways, we can start really learning. And the learning experience for from our situations, from our day to day, from the moment that we leave each time, is really everything that we need in coaching. So sorry, I did want to make a little bit of a point on this, but it's important that sometimes I remind all of you what coaching is, and it becomes much more of a recognized profession, definitely, with tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of coaches around the world at different levels of certifications, of competencies, and of expertise, of specialties, of focusing on different things. Emotional intelligence is what I want to talk about briefly today, and it's a very vast topic, but it is the kind of topic that drives a lot of leaders in what they really do and decide upon, and how they really influence others, or in different situations that can be challenging, a difficult conversation, a conflictual conversation. Those different situations coming up, emotional intelligence drives a lot the leader's decisions, even the decisions you make about how to respond, how to be present in a meeting that is very sensitive, that will really, in fact, determine a lot of things for the company or for the business itself. So this is why emotional intelligence is so crucial and so important for us. What did I want to also mention? And that's the last time I want to tell you this today, is to subscribe on YouTube, because I really don't see the activity on YouTube so much. Well, it's a little bit of our fault, and mine especially, because we do not spend enough time doing all what we have to do to put the engines and to put all the different technical coding, so that YouTube really reaches out to many more people. So my only request when I'm here live with you is to ask you this favor: subscribe. It's really a favor you just, in fact, allow me to ask for, and that favor is going to probably open up for you opportunities in the content that we'll distribute next year, sorry, next week too, but next week we won't have any show. I'll be away, and we're going to probably have 1 week of pause on You Change the World. Okay, so please subscribe on YouTube, and you can correspond with me through the website andrepolitzer.com, and you can also send here, while I'm talking, different messages or comments that you can put on the chat, especially if you watch from the LinkedIn channel, sorry. So what do I want to say about emotional intelligence is a lot about self-awareness. You need to know your level of emotional intelligence, the level of vulnerability you can have in some situations, what things can eventually turn you off, things that really ignite, are, like we say, pressing the buttons on you, where you're going to really have reactions and maybe lose a little bit the control that usually you have over your emotions, and also put the boundaries around your emotions, because that's how you can also inspire confidence and trust, is when people see you strong, when you stand in front of the challenge, when you can even be a role model about how you handle a challenge or a difficult person. The emotional intelligence, as it's called, right, is definitely a level of awareness about how you tackle your emotions, especially when they are showing up in challenges that, in fact, are those challenges that you find mostly the ones that turn you, I would say, off, or the turn of points, the things where you can be disgusted, or the things that are touching your values. So very importantly, the self-awareness is the beginning of it, because that's how you recognize and you understand your own emotions. So by learning about yourself and listening to your close people, to your partners, to your spouses, to your children, sometimes they share with you what they think about your emotions. They give you feedback. And because of that, then you learn more and more about where you are strong and where you are maybe a little weaker. Secondly, I think there is some regulation techniques. And this is where I want to focus today, because people are really after tips and techniques. They want to know methods and techniques to master their emotions and become really, in fact, masters of emotions. This emotional mastery that is really called for at different level of leadership. But as soon as you start interacting with other people in any position, even if you're an individual contributor in an organization, but you work with suppliers, or you work with groups of people, you're a program manager in a software company, and you deal with a lot of engineers and a lot of developers, but you're the program manager. That's everybody who's talking to you to find out, to get the directions about what to do and where to go, and understand the purpose of why they're working on it. There's all kind of things that happen. And I'm very privileged to coach some of you that are program managers in large organizations to have to navigate a very complex matrix organization, get information from all over the place, sometimes contradictory information. How much do you really understand those things, and certainly how much you position yourself in order to not only resolve problems, but be seen and perceived as someone who really gives his or her best in the situation where you are challenged. And this is driven by emotion, because we're human beings. It's amazing, but it is true. So the impact of the emotional regulation is to maintain usually a positive and a productive work mindset or growth mindset. But the tools, the techniques that we can talk about really are especially about, things that I think comes into a coaching session, depending on who you are, depending on your character, your personality. But we'll talk about things like deep breathing, for example. I compare a lot. Each time you go to a meeting or to a room, any room, I'm going to be with me. That's my specialty. That's a little bit my focus, and I work a lot and research a lot on the techniques of actors, because actors are probably the best professional performers of emotions that are calculated in a way or intentional. You are going to be more calculating the moment you're going to have with someone or with a group of people. And you're going to probably put your emotions at the center, knowing what you can do and not do. And then ahead of time, being strategic with yourself and how you're going to create the experience and the perception that you create on people, because you're a leader, because you're a manager, because whoever you are, you want to have an impact and an influence in this particular situation that happens tomorrow, next week, or in a month. And if it's a presentation, if it's a performance on stage, even better, then you really understand why I'm taking this technique from the acting method, because you're under the spotlight physically and you have an audience in front of you. But your emotional status, your emotional state, while you're performing, while you are in front of someone, if you think about it ahead of time, and if you're self-aware, and if you know yourself a little bit, and focus on some aspects of yours that you feel could be having some gaps emotionally, that you are vulnerable, that you might get upset. I'm coaching someone who is, in fact, very aware that each time he's dealing with a project team, he gets upset, he gets impatient. He doesn't want to address something that is not technical with someone who is a salesperson, for example, and take the time and the pain to translate all the, all the jargon that he usually use into an legible and intelligible English or another language, but at least make it accessible to someone who's not technical. Just that alone, right? I know I'm talking to a sales team and I'm an engineer. I'm not going to talk like I'm talking with a technical team, right? They are salespeople. I'm going to adapt my language. In fact, not only my language, but I adapt everything about me to cope with this particular audience. And with my emotions as well, I want to bring the best of myself. I want to be prepared. And then there is the boundary. That's the second technique theme. So the first one was the deep breathing. The deep breathing is really very much what actors use, or anybody uses, in fact, before a challenging moment, just by taking a deep breath, but really a deep breath. And you take 1 or 3 minutes to do that before you go on stage. And I guarantee you, not only actors, athletes, everybody is challenged by this moment coming up. Can be scary moment, can be something that people can be, in fact, impressive on you. You might be intimidated by the situation, or you're an introvert and you don't like to be showing yourself in public. All those different obstacles call for different things to do. So I'm not going to go through all these different um, characters that we can have on the way to be a good performer or a good communicator. But the emotion is the focus of today. And the emotion for this one, I really recommend is deep breath. And I think that closing your eyes and thinking of nothing or thinking of something very meaningful or a person that is very meaningful that can bring to you tranquility and wisdom, right? Or if it's a spiritual call, or if it is about just a connection to God, right? If you believe in God, that's definitely a very good way of starting this process of the deep breath, which is a little bit of meditation, but it is definitely a preparation for you to go to the next space where you're going to be, in fact, perceived by others, maybe judged by others. And sometimes I'm saying to people, so what if you are judged by others? Of course, sometimes it's necessary to say to yourself, so what if someone is judging me? It doesn't really impact me. And that's the thing. It doesn't impact me because why? Because I put a boundary around it. I put a boundary around my emotion. Now, about that second technique about boundaries, what does it mean? It's much more simpler said than done. That's for sure. But it is definitely a determination, a decision you can make with yourself that you will not allow someone to affect you emotionally. You know you're going to deal with people who are offending, who don't have any tact, who are in fact very, uh, you know, insolent, very, very audacious, and sometimes not polite either. And they're not going to respect you, and they might even humiliate you in front of other people. What do you do emotionally with that? This is very challenging when you're humiliated in front of other people, and it's really humiliation because sometimes it's your interpretation or your vulnerability is going to be, in fact, taking this as an humiliation when it's going to be very likely something that is not correct. That person should have done it differently, but should not affect you to the extent that you are affected with it. So all kind of backgrounds of yours, and coaches are not psychologists, we are not therapists, but definitely in your past, everything that you carry within yourself from your past drives a lot of your emotions, okay? And it's not nothing really complicated to understand that. When I'm saying this, this very point now is when you again intentionally create a boundary around yourself that something is not going to affect you emotionally, I guarantee you that you gain 60, 70, maybe 99% of the strength you need, that this thing is not going to affect you at all. And at the end of the day, when you go backwards and you really think about it, and you replay the day or you replay this moment, and you see how strong you were because this boundary was very solid, that you worked a lot on this boundary. You deserve now the reward of this boundary, that you're not affected by this emotional challenge. And that makes you a master of your emotion. So that's the second technique. The boundary is something you define clearly about this particular emotion you're very vulnerable about. You know that these people are going to trigger it, are the ones that provoke always a reaction from you that you don't want to have anymore. And this boundary is something you define very well. You practice even in front of a mirror. You practice in your mind. No, I won't let this happen this time because this person is going to do it again and I'm going to take it personally. No, you're not going to take it personally if you decide not to. That's the boundary I'm trying to talk about. When you know the situation is predictable, you know yourself, that's the self awareness part, and this situation challenges you emotionally, that's when you really think about this boundary. That again, you decide that this particular person with these big particular words that he's usually using is not going to affect you emotionally. If it's words, if it's just a presence, if it's just the kind of reaction this person has, or even if you're right about your intuition or about your interpretation, that this person doesn't like you or has an agenda against you, all kind of things. you can be very strong in front of that. You just have to think about it strategically and prepare it like a war, right? It's a strategy. Strategy is a word that comes from the military vocabulary. It's a strategy that means we think about it as a potential battle and we want to win. Victory is what we want. And this is really a determination, self awareness, and a boundary that you define and that you put and you plant in the ground solidly. And you'll see that one day after the next and the next, you're building and you're building and you're building up yourself. And you will have this boundary in place. You'll internalize it. It's going to work. The third one is really what I call, pause and reflect, right? Pause and reflect. So nobody will be offended if there is a silence when you need to think about something. And emotional intelligence, when it's not so intelligent, makes you react in the moment, or especially when you do this in writing, this is horrible because consequences are much more serious than if it is verbal. But that will go to this another time when I talk about emails. Believe me, I made myself a mistake recently. And this is amazing because I'm coaching people about not using emails, but sometimes you have no choice, right? So I'm not going to talk to you about my mistake, but I'm going to talk to you about vulnerability and emotional intelligence, that you have to reflect. You have to pause before you press the button send. The same when you want to say something, or the same when something is coming up and you need to be prepared. Or someone is in the negotiation telling you something. And this is, in fact, calling for a little bit of a reflection. You can't react to this because you're going to lose in the negotiation, or you're going to take a weaker position. Sometimes in negotiation, you have to show yourself as a strong person. Now that the person is challenging you in front of you, or the situation challenges you, why we won't press the button pause, sit back, or leave the room and ask for permission to the people that are in the room to take a few minutes break and reflect before you make any decision or you move forward in the next step of this particular situation you're in. So that's the pause and reflection. That's the third example of what an emotional intelligence technique can be, about very much, what we call a regulation, an emotional regulation. The fourth one that I have in mind, which I speak a lot about every day, is journaling. Is to really handle a journal, is to manage a journal, to maintain one, to express and process your emotions in writing. Now, there's something really magic with the pen. I said that several times to you and wrote postings on LinkedIn about it. This is the kind of thing I come back with a lot, because this is the thing I'm experiencing myself with real breakthroughs throughout my life, my career. This pen is a magical instrument for me. We tried, the whole society, the whole evolution of technology and innovation tries, maybe not voluntarily, to separate you from this incredible tool, because it's at the end of your fingers there and it writes with your own writing something about, very holistically, what you feel will pass through this pen much better than by typing on a keyboard and having a differential of time. Because when you type a letter G, J, K on your keyboard and it goes on the screen, there's a few seconds between the moment you type and it goes on the screen. Here, it's real time. It's your own writing. You know that scripts calls for, there's people who are specialized in writing and interpreting your script style and your writing, which is so personal to you and can eventually reveal to you a lot of things about yourself from your writing. Why? Because the writing is something not only personal, but the writing is very, very much the expression of your soul. That's what I want to try to say. Journaling your emotions on paper, dedicating a pen eventually, and dedicating a notebook to this exercise will take you to a very, very, very far and very high level of emotional mastery. Take notes of your feelings, organize them by different situations if you want, professionally, personally, if it's gratitude, if it's grudges, if it's different things of that nature. But your emotion on paper, read them back on a frequently, and see to it for yourself if there is anything you can take away from your own writings. That's the fourth technique of regulating your emotion that I'm proposing. There is more physical exercise, for example, seeking feedback, other things of that nature will be techniques that you will use to regulate your emotions. Feedback is a great one because you ask other people to help you in this respect. If I'm doing this in coaching, that we talk about emotional regulation or emotional intelligence in general, we'll do that. We'll do the role playing and the exercises we need for you to start mastering those emotions that are on your way and are obstacles to your growth or to the growth of the people you want to impact or you want to serve. If you're a servant leader or if you're someone just in your community or in your family, you want to support someone, you need to be strong on a particular type of emotion that you haven't been strong about and have been working on. And that becomes your opportunity to master it. So this is why I give you a little bit of a few hints today, but this is definitely crucial in the workspace and crucial in life to have more kind of a grasp about your own way of reacting and feeling when you can try to control this ahead of time, intentionally create the boundaries around yourself so that some people or some events or situations don't affect you emotionally. You'll see that very big leaders, role models in their respect, can be extremely strong in some aspects where you feel yourself very weak. Looking up to them and looking why and how they do this could be also an excellent way of learning what would resonate for you personally. And now you can adapt it to your own person. So I want to leave you with these words today. It's been a half hour on this topic. I think it's an important one. It's a crucial one. It's one that is very personal to you, and it's emotion. And don't forget, I wish I could offer you a nice pen and afford at the end of this year, a nice holidays gift that you can ask someone to give you. And I would make it, in fact, a very beautiful one. This one is really pretty average. A pretty pen, a pretty notebook, journal your feelings, journal your emotions, and keep that journal very, very steady in your cadence, in the way you want to make it a real ritual, a ritual in your day, if you could. I'll tell you, it's worth millions, millions of many things, not only dollars, many things. Thank you for joining today. If you stayed the whole length, thank you even more. And looking forward to seeing you in the next year with all my best wishes to all of you for a happy new year, happy holidays with your family, with your dear ones. And of course, taking a break from work is the opportunity to embrace your emotion in a very positive way and build a positive upcoming year all the way through. Thank you so much. Bye.